Hi, my name's Andrew McCallum, aka Mental Floss, and I'm on Pepper Scott Television.
And welcome to Pepper Scott, and our guest this evening is Andrew McCallum from Mental Floss. Introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm Andrew. My alter ego is Mental Floss, and I've been writing electronic music since about 1991.
Can you tell me a little bit about POTS?
POTS essentially was a session that I had designed where I could interact with the people who I had been writing music and distributing music for online, because I'm not essentially a live musician per se, and most of my distribution, most of the interaction with fans has been through the internet, and most of that isn't in real time. I'll make a song, I'll put it on the net, make it available to them, and they can download it and listen to it offline. So what I did for POTS is I gained access to a real audio server through Interlog, and that allowed me up to about 70 connections or 70 listeners at one time. So one day I just sort of started collecting email addresses for people who would want to sit down and listen to this sort of thing, where I could actually talk to them and they could sort of type back to me, and I could actually play a semi sort of live set for them on the net. So just one day during August, on a Wednesday, I had set up all my equipment in my basement with all my computers around me, and I had sort of an IRC chat session going in front of me, and encoded it, sent it to Interlog, where it distributed it to all the listeners online, and I just sort of talked back and forth. It just started by just picking up the microphone and saying, hey, and then going from there.
And how many listeners have been online listening to your stuff?
The first one, I think they're probably, from what I could see from the people online, there's about 40 people online. I've done 3 so far, and the second one I was actually able to get better statistics for, and that one we gained probably about 120 listeners online.
Okay, I understand the Dr. Trent's show has a listenership of 50,000, and you had a gig with them.
Yeah, there was Dr. Trent's had his show was previously on 103.5, and they had done some sampling. They figured out they had a listener base of about 50,000. He primarily played electronic music that would be more geared towards the rave scene, mostly primarily trance music as the name goes. And he did a series of featuring Toronto-based musicians and DJs, just sort of get their name on the air, and I was one of the people who would, one of my tapes had eventually made its way over to him, so I was one of the people he had on.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about your gear and what you use to actually make your tunes?
That's actually really sort of interesting. The actual equipment that I use is actually, I essentially just started out with a computer. I didn't have a sound card initially, which is generally what people plug their speakers into so that they can get sound for games and that sort of thing. I just had the speaker inside, so I got clips, clipped them onto the speaker, and then hooked it up to my stereo. The sound was really bad, but I eventually got a sound card after that. And the software I used now is called Impulse Tracker. It's gone through different versions and stuff, and other software I used previously. And I know a lot of people now are distributing music on the net using a format called MP3, where you can record anything you like, and then pretty much distribute it in a fairly small file size.
Can you talk a little bit about Brainforce? Is that the CD?
Oh, the CD is sort of untitled right now. I'm thinking of calling it Unwaxed. Brainforce was sort of the draft name before that, and that's just sort of a compilation of Mental Floss's greatest hits, so to speak.
Really, it's quite long, because when I notice on the liner notes it says it may not play on certain CDs, and on the first track it's like 7 hours, or it seemed like a long time.
Yeah, it's actually a mixed mode CD. Part of it's regular audio that you can play in a CD player, and the rest of it's actual computer data. So some of those are MP3s because it's a compressed format. You can actually fit more music on it, and some of it's lower grade real audio. So in total, in that little portion, there's probably 4 hours worth of compressed music that you can only play on a computer, and then there's probably about 55 to 60 minutes of regular audio play on the other ones. In total, I've probably written about 6 discs worth of music, so there's quite a bit to choose from.
How many songs? How many individual songs have you written?
Completed songs, probably maybe about 120, and
that's very prolific.
And probably total songs, probably about 200, maybe a little over that.
Okay, what I've heard so far is instrumental. Do you do any vocals?
That was the limitation of the format that I chose to write my music in. I was always interested in the sound of synthesized sound, and when I started, when I found out that I could make those sounds with my computer, I chose a format called mod format, which had a very short sample size. You could maybe only fit about 3 seconds worth of audio for one sample. So if you wanted to put in lyrics, you'd have to chop up your samples in 3-second little bursts, and then you had only a maximum of 32 samples that you could use in it. So I wasn't really lyrically minded when I first started out with, but I find that a lot of the music I have written, you could actually add voice into it, but it's not the way that I think, not the way that I really write. Historically, I've been writing sort of music along the trance-based genre, and more recently I've been writing more techno that people have been asking me to release more older sort of trance music, which is, I'm not quite writing as much anymore, but it's still something I sort of enjoy. I mean, I'd like to eventually release a CD, and hopefully that'll be done by May. I'm also working on a music video that's going to be shot on film with airplay on mind, like Much Music or whatnot, which will hopefully also be completed by May, and hopefully see some more of me in the real world as opposed to just the internet. And I'd also like to say a big thanks to just the whole tracking community in general. I know we're kind of shrinking as the elders sort of get more busy, and easier tools come in use, like Rebirth and Rubber Duck, which is sort of thinning away the sort of eloquence of electronic music, I find, but that's a whole separate thing. And but I mean, it's been a good community to be a part of, and I hope to put something back into it someday.